Today's episode of the Bill Simmons podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network is brought to you, as always, by ZipRecruiter. I did not have to use ZipRecruiter when I hired our fantastic Ringer staff, but if I had, their powerful engine probably would have told me to hire everyone we've hired. That's how good Zip is. 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within a day. They are the best at distributing your job to the best boards, identifying the right people, and inviting them to apply. My listeners can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/BS for free. What do you have to lose? Meanwhile, SeatGeek, the best app for buying and selling tickets to sporting events, concerts, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, and more. For $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase on any game or sporting event for whatever you want to go see. You know what to do. Use promo code BS. You could buy your Yankee playoff tickets right now. Download the SeatGeek app or go right to SeatGeek.com. Should mention two podcasts, The Recapables. Mallory Rubin and I did Billions, episode 2. It is up. We broke everything down, including the controversial helicopter landing at the Little League field. Also, I was on Channel 33 with Sean Fennessy. Him and Chris Ryan did top 5 Spielberg movies of all time. And then I went on at the end as the closer and gave my Spielberg thoughts. I have some Spielberg thoughts, apparently. I am going to Augusta this week for the Masters, and we're doing a whole bunch of content, including a big podcast middle of the week on this podcast. I think Joe House and I are going to be against all odds, giving our Masters preview with cousin Sal. We're going to do a House of Carbs Augusta thing. I'm going to be on the Shack House pod on Thursday. We're blowing it all out. It is a multi-podcast extravaganza, and not just about what's happening at the Masters, but what it's like to be there, what we're eating, and more importantly, what we're eating. So you can listen to all those, subscribe, check them out, test them out, whatever you want to do. Coming up, this podcast is going in a whole bunch of places. Just trust me, hold my hand. We'll walk through this together. But first, Pearl Jam. All right, coming up a little bit, we'll be talking to JackO about the start of the baseball season, as well as his favorite sporting event whenever UConn's women's team loses. Brings him the most happiness possible. Right now, Chris Ryan and Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer. You've heard them on 20 different podcasts. They're here now. We have, 9 days left? 8 days left?
Yeah.
What's the number one storyline for you right now, KOC?
I think it's still the Western Conference. Like, who's going to get in, who's going to get out? We still have only a couple games separating the Clippers, Nuggets. They're out right now, but they're only a game back from New Orleans, 2 games back from Utah. That's still the story to me.
I have a counter.
Okay.
Does it matter? I feel like there's 5 good teams in the West, and I'm not sure any of these other teams. Minnesota, I guess maybe if Butler can come back and do anything, but the Pelicans aren't doing anything. The Nuggets aren't doing anything, and the Clippers aren't doing anything in the playoffs. None of those teams are beating Houston or Golden State. Minnesota's the only possible maybe upside team, and I don't believe in them either.
So my big storyline is definitely that tier below Golden State, that Trailblazers, Spurs, Thunder, Jazz tier, and who's real there, and who could actually challenge a shakier Golden State. You know,
there's only 3, right?
It's the
Utah, OKC, and Portland, I think, are at least going to give you a series.
Right.
Minnesota's given them a hard time in the past, though, even when Steph's played. So if they get Butler back and they're really building positive momentum, maybe they're a team that can really push Golden State minus Steph.
So we have 5.5 teams we like. I'm going to give them a half.
You're writing off San Antonio just because no Kawhi.
No Kawhi.
I just don't think they have the star power. You can't
you need a star to win a championship.
45 and 32, and I would argue. All right, so they're 13 games over 500. Whatever their infrastructure / system thing is, probably swung 15 games from this year. It's basically a 500 team that won 13 games. It won just because they're good in the regular season. They know what they're doing. That's not going to work in the playoffs.
I just can't believe what a cockroach this Kawhi Leonard story is. Like, you cannot kill this story. Every time it's been tried to be put to bed, it's now he's going back to New York, and Popovich is like his team of guys. I mean, his team decides he's ready, It's amazing.
You and I were talking about how this never happens with the Spurs.
Ever.
And
Ever.
yet the Spurs have been secretly kind of dramatic over the course of the decade, but it always is managed
you've had
well.
the Tony Parker.
The Tony Parker Brent Barry thing was one of the weirdest things that happened all decade. Duncan's wife and all the crazy allegations when they got divorced.
LaMarcus wanting to be traded. Yeah.
LaMarcus demanded a trade.
And it's not just this decade.
Steven Jackson, they waived a week before the playoffs. They told him to get the F out. He was on the team. He was like in the rotation.
What's the matter with the Spurs? A special Blog Boys investigation.
We're the Blog Boys of the Spurs. I just think it's a little more tumultuous than we realize. They're just really good at keeping everything in house.
Yeah,
and
I think
the
part
Kawhi
of it,
story is the best example of this. This Kawhi story is insane.
Yeah.
And if it was any other team, it would be leaks. If this happened in Cleveland,
this is a top 5 player who's just
everywhere.
essentially refusing to play, right? Can we say that? Is that too?
It seems like he is refusing to play.
Any other story, any other team, this would lead every show, every day.
Yeah, if Kevin Durant was basically cleared to medically cleared to play, was away from Golden State, hanging out in New York with separate team without the team doctors.
With teammates taking shots at him.
And if Steph and Draymond were like, we've rehabbed, we have the best doctors.
My ankle injury was 100 times worse.
etc. It is wild. I have obviously a ton of respect and belief in the Spurs infrastructure, like you're saying, and I also cannot wait for a possible Spurs Rockets matchup.
Oh my God! Well, Kawhi was the number 2 MVP and the number 3 MVP. Mm-hmm. So there's 2 years where he was the top 3 player in the league. And now he's just completely wiped out. And I don't know, the history of guys losing a whole year like this and then coming back and being exactly what they were is pretty mixed.
Well, and even this year in the 9 or so games that he played, he wasn't Kawhi.
No, he seemed
there's elements
slow.
of him.
Yeah, but he wasn't like Memphis Rudy Gay. I mean, he was just pretty good.
He was still good.
But he was there's like 6 or 7 guys that are just at the top level.
Yeah.
And he was in there, and it didn't seem like he was close to that level from what we saw. But obviously, he wasn't feeling great. But when I watch Paul George on OKC sometimes, when he's really feeling it and he's on both ends like a maniac, that's what Kawhi used to do.
Yeah.
We might not see that again.
I hope we do, whether it's with San Antonio or somebody else. I hope we do.
What are your conspiracies? Do you have any conspiracy theories for this?
So at the beginning of the season, my conspiracy was that they were going to use this excuse as a way to rest Kawhi whenever he came back with the new rest rules, not allowed to rest players. But that obviously was silly, not the case. Yeah. At this point, I do think Kawhi perhaps might have some internal, some people in his circle that might want him elsewhere. Whether that happens, who knows? But
it's almost like an embarrassment of riches for the Lakers with those 2 salary cap slots.
What I don't understand is
5 guys available for 2 spots.
The timing of it is Kawhi. There's nothing Kawhi can really do to not get that supermax from San Antonio.
But would you give him that though at this point?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think he's a top 5 player. Absolutely.
I think
I would be very scared.
You're kidding me, are you?
I really would. I would be scared if I'm San Antonio. I'm not saying if I'm another team. I'm saying if I'm San Antonio and I watch this guy handle his business the way he did for an entire season and seem like he didn't want to be part of the team, why do I want to give you $240 million?
So the counter to that is that by all accounts, when LaMarcus went to Pop him saying, I don't think I fit in here, I want to be traded, Popovich was like, I can't, there's nothing I can get in return for you that would be of equal value. So we're going to have to make it work. So what would he say to Kawhi? And do you really think that R.C. Buford and Greg Popovich are going to bend to Kawhi's inner circle or Jumpman or whatever it is that's like influencing all of it? What are they going to do? Just be like, you can sit.
Here's the thing. Aldridge at the time had 4 years left on his deal.
Yeah.
Kawhi, free agent in 2019. That's the difference.
I think the Aldridge thing's completely different because the real reason they didn't trade Aldridge was because there was no market for him. What were they getting?
Actually, the deal came after. So it wasn't 4 years left.
Yeah.
It was 1 year left.
They re-upped him.
Yeah, they re-upped him.
Okay.
So actually that was incorrect what I just said. Yeah.
Right. So it's okay.
Just making sure.
But the reality was they didn't have a trade for him.
Yeah.
He was available in June. Nobody wanted him.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm not
taking
trading
on
you to
that
Phoenix
contract?
for a bunch of garbage. You know, like
Right, he's like, no thanks. I'm not getting Marquise
and you
Chris
know
and,
what?
Jared
Greg
Dudley's
Popovich is right,
contract.
because look at LaMarcus Aldridge this year. He's probably a top 10, top 15
But
player
this
this year.
Kawhi situation's different because if they could get, put it this way, Belichick would trade him. And I think the Spurs are the most wired like the Belichick Pats. Belichick would look at this and go, you don't want to be here? Fuck you. I'll get Brandon Ingram and I'll have more cap space and I'll be able to sign somebody else.
I wonder if the better
That's how they
analogy
handle
would be
it.
the Packers, and the Packers aren't trading Aaron Rodgers. You know, it's like that's.
I don't think he's Aaron Rodgers.
Are we on the same
Rodgers
planet
was-
right now?
Aaron Rodgers was one of the best 4 quarterbacks of all time. Kawhi Leonard has been a top 3 player twice.
I think Kawhi Leonard can be Russell Westbrook on offense, and then he can be Paul George on defense.
He's just missed the whole season.
I know that. I'm not saying that
You
there
have
aren't
no
bumps in the
idea
road.
what's wrong with him.
He's got a quad injury that he's obviously like not sure
It
about.
seems like more of an injury than just a quad injury. It
Look,
seems like a
I just
fundamental
watched the number
physical
one
issue.
pick not play for 70
Well, you've had-
games.
yeah, you've had it over
So
and over
like,
again.
I'm okay.
Here's
Yeah.
the thing. This is a quad injury that 2 years ago, Tom Haberstroh wrote a great article on ESPN about how the Spurs had to solve this weird little quad issue that he had at the beginning of the 2014-15 season.
So you're saying this is a 4-year deal?
Yeah, it's not something that just started this year. He had quad pain last year. 2 years ago, it was solved. So it's not something that just popped up. It's something that he's had at least for 4 years now. So will it go away? Will it go better? We really don't know. And maybe that's why Kawhi is in a spot where he's like, you know what? I can't play because I can't risk getting hurt again now. Maybe he needs to take a step back and get 100% healthy, not just 90%. Maybe he wants to get rid of the problem entirely. Can he? Who knows?
You know
I
what?
don't know.
If I'm Popovich, the only person I'm picking up the phone for Kawhi is Anthony Davis, and that's it.
So you wouldn't trade him for like more so assets, salary. Like
I don't
cap
think
space.
Popovich is in the. I think the whole reason they have LaMarcus and the whole reason Popovich is still there is because this is the window. The window is the Kawhi LaMarcus. I think that, you know, with our coaching, we can match up with anybody. We can take out Houston. We can give Golden State problems.
I don't think you're going to get that though.
I think it's a different. So I didn't think the Cavs should have traded Kyrie.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they should just wrote it out and waited. But the reasons were different on that because they had LeBron James, who was still one of the best 2 or 3 players in the league. And they had a chance to win a title. And it was too risky to trade Kyrie because the whole point is to win the title. I don't think the Spurs can win a title with what they have. I think they're just, at least even if Kawhi was 1,000% healthy, I still think they're a level below Houston and Golden State. And if Kawhi can leave in a year and he's this unhappy and he rejected that Jordan Brand contract, which I think is another really interesting piece of this, that whether it's his inner circle, whether it's him, who knows? But he obviously feels like he's not as famous as some of these other guys, and it bugs him.
And he wants to get paid top dollar.
He wants to get paid, and he wants to be more. And it seems like he wants to be more recognizable, which is, I think, weird for us to understand because he didn't seem like a guy who ever gave a shit about any of that. He was this quiet guy who did nothing, and then the whole point of him,
thing was
he was like
Terminator
Duncan
Kawhi,
2.0.
that we sort of robbed him of his kind of like soul because it was just like a guy built in a lab to play for the Spurs.
But obviously he does care about some of that stuff. And I think that's a piece of this. And maybe he doesn't want to be like, oh, you're just Popovich's robot like Duncan was.
and that's the thing, right? So that report, I forget who reported a couple months ago, but he wanted to be paid top dollar by a shoe company, but it seems like they didn't want to pay him that. The reason why they wouldn't want to is because he's in San Antonio. He doesn't transcend that market like Russell Westbrook does in OKC, like LeBron James does no matter where he is. So maybe if you're Kawhi and his team, you're like, we need him in a big market city where he can get paid top dollar and get top level exposure. Whereas in San Antonio,
Which would be
he's not gonna
LA.
get that. Probably LA, yeah.
And I think if you look at somebody like Paul George, who is the sidekick for Russell Westbrook.
Yep.
And Russell Westbrook's been awesome since the All-Star break.
Really
He went
good.
from somebody that I thought potentially could not make the All-NBA team to, I think he's second team
no doubt.
easily. But if you're Paul George, you go to the Lakers and you're now the face of the Lakers. You're at a different level with everything. You're at a different level of stardom. You're at a different level with endorsements. You're kind of become the guy. And
Are you on a good team though?
well, but I wonder with that stuff. Well, if you're Paul George, you're thinking like, I'm going to the Lakers. They'll figure it out. They have, they're a top 3 market and they have all these young guys and we'll be really good.
They'll be good pretty soon.
But if I'm Kawhi, I'm like, I already won a title. I think that's another thing we forget about this stuff. And I think that was a big part of the Kyrie thing. He had already won a title. It's like,
So you think once you win a title, you're playing with house money?
I think they think about it a little differently.
It doesn't really matter because if they don't win the title, then it's torture. I'm tortured by the fact that I haven't gotten the chip yet, so I have to go somewhere where that's possible. I mean,
but I do think it's a little liberating.
People like to move around. I think it just engages a different part of your brain when you put yourself out there onto an open market.
What the Celtics people have told me about Kyrie is that they're surprised he was able to be a sidekick for LeBron for that long because they're like, this guy's a complete alpha. They said he's like exactly like what KG was like.
Kyrie's talked a lot about that. I remember in the playoffs, I think it was last year, maybe the year before with Cleveland, he talked about the sacrifice that him and LeBron had to go to, putting their egos aside.
Right. And it was like, who the fuck are you? You're 24, but now
you
it
played
makes
8
more
games
sense
at Duke and you were on a terrible Cavs team until LeBron came along. Saved your career.
It'll be like when you start your own site and people will be like, I can't believe Chris and Bill coexisted for that long.
I know. When Chris.com pops off, I know.
Barstool Chris.
Philly sports guy.
Philly sports guy. But anyway, to go back to the West, the matchups are really fun right now, and I think they're probably going to stay the way they are. I mean, Houston's a wash, but Houston was going to crush anybody, right? That one's going to be a 4-game sweep. The only hope anyone has is that they're so bored right now and they've clinched everything, and you can get a little flimsy down the stretch, right? You can like lose your pizzazz a little bit.
Dan Tony talked a little about that.
And
recently,
that's why he was like, I don't want to have a rested team that's out of rhythm going into the playoffs.
Right. So you can't have a rested team that's not playing good. I think like that was the line. It's like, well, yeah, you also want to be good. So you might want to rest a little bit.
In his head.
I think Golden State round 1 with no Curry, talent-wise, nobody should touch them. There's so much going on with that team. Like Durant comes back on Thursday and gets thrown out of his first game. There's like this bubbling kind of anger with that team that they can't really seem to harness.
I love it.
It's good, but I think like the right team can really like kind of get to them and they can get Draymond thrown out of a game.
Sure, but that was the case when they were winning 73 games a year too.
But they're not the same team anymore.
I completely appreciate everything that you're saying about them. The exhaustion that they must be feeling mentally. Like I don't think they have as good of a bench team.
With everything. Just get us to round 3.
But that could also be the chip on your shoulder. I feel like we're speaking really like in like, mental toughness cliches or whatever, but I do think that they are like really pissed. I think that they, as we heard from your podcast, read everything about them. They've been reading about Houston all year. I think they're ready to bring it.
Well, I don't think Minnesota is. You think you're more optimistic?
What if Butler gets back? Does that change the equation? Let's say
I just don't like their team enough.
I don't either.
I think Utah would be a problem. I also think they would beat Utah
for sure,
but I think Utah would be a problem. They would actually have to win that series.
Golden State's had a hard time with Towns in the past, though. He's one of the few guys,
and Towns is getting better.
Headaches. Yeah, he's been awesome.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think Minnesota could give Golden State some trouble. They wouldn't beat him, but without Curry, I certainly think Towns would be a load to handle. I think still maybe 5-6 games, maybe. Not
the thing with Minnesota is, and it's Utah has the same problem to some degree. Guys who have just never been in a series like that.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. I don't trust Wiggins at all. And I think he's taken a lot of shit this season, rightly so. And then you're putting him in that series and, it's a recipe for disaster. Towns has been, really seems like he's gone up a level since the All-Star game.
3rd year in a row.
Maybe confidence. Yeah.
Confidence and usage. I mean, as soon as Jimmy goes out, Towns starts getting
nemesis
upwards of 20 shots a game, and it really starts to open up for him.
Even then, it still feels like there's more. Mm-hmm. There's still more that he can give if he's fed the opportunity.
So they're +2 for the year, which I don't like. They're 5-5 in their last 10, which I don't like. They're 16-23 on the road, which I really don't like. I don't like teams that don't win on the road. The Celtics aren't going to make the finals this year, but I think the craziest thing about the Celtics is
they play so well now.
29-10 on the road,
wild,
which is just nuts. Like they're actually, in some ways, it's a disadvantage for them to be at home. They love being on the road.
That's Spursian. That's like we're ready to play every night.
But I think Utah, the thing with them is just how much they rely on Mitchell. And just relying on a rookie like that in the playoffs, it's a recipe for disaster.
Can we talk about how excited we are for Gobert Nurkic in the first round?
Well, but that's the thing is this stuff could change tonight.
I know, but if you're saying that this
Nurkic will
would be such a good, a fun first round. See those guys stuck with each other in the paint for 4 or 5 games. Someone's getting clotheslined.
I'm rooting, and right now, like OKC is a half game up on Utah, but my dream scenario is Portland, OKC 3-6.
Yeah, that would also be another incredible first round.
The best series of the playoffs, hands down.
2 incredible arenas, too, in terms of the crowd there. That would be like
2 soccer mom cities. Yeah, it's the only.
How could you guys not want Golden State, Oklahoma City, though? In the first round,
that'd be pretty good too.
Because that takes, I feel like that
Steph?
takes Oklahoma City, whether you like them or not, is like one of the more interesting teams. I kind of want them to be in the mix for a little while longer beyond that.
To get to a round 2.
Yeah.
So you want round 2 Golden State,
Yes.
Oklahoma City with Steph maybe back mid-series.
Yes. And
Well,
Russ,
that's
Russ being like,
moving
I'm
over.
still better than him. Yeah.
Okay.
So if that's our 3-6, either team Golden State plays in round 2 is a great series.
Yeah,
Because
no
Golden
doubt.
State Portland would be awesome too, especially if Curry doesn't come back in time for
Dame
it.
and
They'd be in a
CJ
lot of trouble in that
versus
series.
Clay without Steph as his partner with Quinn Cook. With Quinn Cook. Yeah, that would be pretty fun.
I'm a believer in Portland, which I've been saying for a while. I don't think they could beat Golden State, but I do think that could be a 7-game classic.
Yeah.
And they could definitely make the Warriors sweat and stuff. The Spurs are just a turd in the punch bowl for me in this. I'm sorry. I respect the Spurs. I thought what they did in 2014 was incredible.
Hope Shea's
I just
not
don't want to
listening.
watch them in a playoff series. Like, oh, great. Kyle, good pick and roll with Kyle Anderson. Just not interested. LaMarcus Aldridge, throwing it down
The
to
anti-Spurs
LaMarcus.
rhetoric from you today is really
I just
strong.
don't enjoy watching them. I'm sorry.
Hope Shea Serrano's not listening.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. KOC, let's quickly talk about tonight's national championship game and our favorite draft prospects. Hey, Google, set a timer for 2 minutes. Here we go.
All right, 2 minutes, starting now.
All right, draft prospects tonight. Favorite.
Got Mikal Bridges on Villanova. Only lottery pick in the Tonight's games. 2-way player, 3-and-D guy. Maybe capable of a little bit more once he develops his ball handling ability.
I love this guy, and I think he's going to go 4 spots too late in the draft, and he's going to come in, and he's like the absolute perfect 3-and-D guy, athletic. I could see him on 15 teams. He could actually come into the playoffs right now and probably play for like 9 of the playoff teams.
And then Nova has another guy too, though, that you could also play immediately in today's league. And this is why they're the big favorite tonight with Jalen Brunson. I know you're a fan of him. Just knows how to play the game. Really beefy point guard, can shoot threes, can post them up. He's an exciting late first round pick or maybe early second for Nova.
Yeah, he's got one of those old school pickup games where sometimes he'll like put the guy in his hip and take him to the foul line and do like that herky jerky stuff. And like he came out of the 80s, which is funny because his dad was Rick Brunson, who played for the Celtics.
There's some Mark Jackson.
Yeah, it's almost like Rick Brunson taught him like 90s point guard play. Who else do we have?
And then on Michigan, you got Mo Wagner, power forward / center. 3-point shooter, needs to get better defensively, but he plays with energy that's contagious. I think if he has a big game shooting the ball and taking advantage of mismatches down low, I think Michigan has a shot, but Wagner needs to be at his best.
Any second rounders that we like?
Yeah, I think a second rounder, maybe slips in the late first round, but more likely a second round prospect if he declares.
Who is the biggest draft prospect stock winner out of this whole tournament?
It might be Brunson. In my opinion, I think he went from a second round guy to, in my opinion, a guy who should be in the first round conversation. So I think Brunson's play has just been outstanding.
Remember
His
I
ability to
texted
create-
you? I barely watch any college basketball, and I just do the 5-minute Malcolm Gladwell blink test, and I'm like, who's this dude on West Virginia, the point guard? He's good. Who's that dude? Why isn't Brunson a first rounder? I don't understand.
And I remember saying to you, he's a junior. He doesn't do this, doesn't do that, but he's done it all in the March Madness for Villanova.
Hey, Google, stop timer. We're done. All right, we're back with Chris and KOC. All right, we're going to the East. The East right now. Oh, shit. Miami and Milwaukee switched. Yesterday, the East was in a position where I loved every single series.
And you thought maybe there would be an upset in every single series, right?
I just thought the case could be made.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Indiana plays Philly really well. Washington, I don't think could beat Cleveland, but they play them really well, and they're a nice matchup, and they do some things. Their backcourt is so much better than Cleveland's backcourt, and they do have guys to at least throw at LeBron to make him work a little bit, and I don't know. They could at least hang with them. Celtics, Miami.
Also, the Cavs are still having to work to beat Mavs teams, even though we're in April.
I'll tell you that the confidence of the Cavs fans is really fascinating. It's like we do this every year. We have LeBron.
You do
We're
not
fine.
do this every year. Just as somebody who's been watching you guys really closely for the last 5 years.
You guys are terrible defensively. Like really like historically bad.
They do have LeBron though.
And they have
They're
LeBron.
right about that.
And the case now is like, we'll just outscore everybody. That's never worked for 4 straight rounds in the
Yeah, I
playoffs
know.
in the history of the league.
It's like, okay, you guys want to be Doug Moe Denver? It's good luck.
Great. We've seen that before. But Philly, Indiana would be great. Toronto versus Miami, which now it wouldn't happen if the season ended today because Miami's 7. But Toronto, Miami have had really good games this year. And it's a weirdly similar teams that, am I crazy that Miami could beat Toronto in a series?
I mean, Toronto slipped a little bit. They haven't been the same for maybe three and a half weeks
Yeah.
now or so. I'd still take Toronto in that series.
Of course.
They're
I think you would
more
take all the
firepower.
favorites in all these series.
Really
but
good
better defense.
Like Miami's bringing in a really good coach with a lot of experience, and they have so many different combinations that they can throw at you.
It's such a weird team. It's so hard to play in a series. And it's like, oh, Olenek's hot. We'll just ride him. Like,
Yeah,
how do you
well,
prepare for that?
How do you prepare for just there's like a random Bam Adebayo dunk that sends
Right.
the place into hysterics, and Goran gets hot, or James Johnson gets hot, or Wayne Ellington gets hot,
And
or
that's-
Kelly Olynyk is just keeping it and driving and dunking every
Dwayne Wade will have one game.
Yeah.
And that's the good thing. Like you said, Chris, they can play different styles.
Yes.
They can play big with Whiteside and Olynyk.
If Whiteside chooses to play, yes.
Yes, they can put Olynyk at the 5 and space the floor, or they can go super small with James Johnson and Justice Winslow as their 4 and 5. They can take on different styles, set a tone. It's
a murderous team.
It's going to make them a tough out in the playoffs.
How much do you like Bam?
I like Bam. I think he's headed for Mitch Kupchak giving him an $80 million contract in 3 years. And
Yeah.
Mitch Kupchak's running the Hornets.
Bam
It's like,
looks-
I have some ideas. We'll get Bam.
Bam looks like he's been carving things into mountains. That guy is so built.
Charlotte, I heard at the draft, but before the draft, Charlotte was looking at Mitchell and Bam, but they ended up going with Malik Monk.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I'm trading for Malik right now if I'm one of the GMs. The Celtics, I really wanted them to play Milwaukee, even though Milwaukee is somebody that's played them well, because after going in person to that Clippers-Bucks game and seeing just how disorganized Milwaukee was, I was like, that's a team I want to put in the playoff series. And all their fans feel the same way. Like I tweeted last night about how they basically had the anti-Brad Stevens as their coaches this year. I almost think that it would be worth it for them to fire their interim coach, Joe, what's his name?
Joe
Prunty.
Prunty.
Joe Brundy?
Prunty. This
Joe
is a
Prunty?
running bit on various NBA
Yeah, no, I
shows,
know.
is that nobody knows this guy's name.
Well, then when you go to the game, he's just standing there. It looks like he's like the caretaker. But I almost wonder if
I'm Mr. Prunty. I'm teaching chemistry today.
Just trying to
Let's
stay out
have
of the
some
way.
fun, guys. Chemistry can be fun.
Giannis, I've heard you're great. I almost wonder if they're better off just firing him and hiring David Fizdale for like 3 weeks. Just like a 3-week deal. Like we'll pay him by the
What
week.
would happen if Milwaukee hired Patino for the playoffs?
Oh, God.
Here-
That would make it
Here's
worse.
the thing: the coach wasn't the problem; it's the roster. It's the way the pieces fit together. Jason, I mean, the coach matters, but I think the team needs a little bit of a shakeup too to improve their personnel and the way they all fit together.
But it's one of those teams, though, that they're running a play that ends up with like Brandon Jennings isolated against DeAndre Jordan, and then he can't do anything.
They're still Jason Terry is still playing crunch time point
Jason
guard
Terry
minutes for them.
started.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. But what if they paid Fizdale like $150,000 a week for as long as the Bucks lasted? Just like, hey, just come in for 3
With
weeks.
also the intention of keeping him next season?
No, just be like, just come on in for 3 weeks. Just come in. We're hiring you as a temp for 3 weeks.
Why are we confident though that a coach is going to fix this roster right now?
Because I
I'm
thought
not.
if they do things like give the ball to Giannis, play the right players, don't start Jason Terry.
Right.
It would
It
help.
seems like very simple stuff.
It would help, but I do think the roster needs some changes.
Yeah. It's clear that Jabari is not long for that world.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's mortified by how this all played out, right?
It's an odd fit with him and Giannis. It feels like it should work, but
Doesn't
it just
fit.
He's
doesn't. It just
pressing too.
doesn't.
It kind of sucks.
Oh, he was so bad the other
Yeah.
night. They told me at the Clipper game that after that 60 Minutes piece, they had 1,400 tickets sold in the 36 hours after that 60 Minutes piece for the Clippers game.
Wow.
Like 22 million people saw it. Giannis went to this whole other level of fame, right?
Yeah.
And there's poor Jabari, who was kind of the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to throw out a team for him. You sitting down, Casey? Thank God you're sitting down.
I'm ready.
The Utah Jazz.
Be nice.
Mormon?
Yeah.
They'd love him. They could sign and trade him this summer, I think.
Yeah.
If they wanted to. Or he could just
Sign.
do whatever. But anyway, I would want to play them. And I think whoever gets Milwaukee in round one, as great as Giannis is, he's a year away.
Yeah.
He
A year away and a coach away.
Seen him a couple times now in person this year. He's just incredible. I mean, he had 5 blocks in the first half of the Clipper game I went to, but he doesn't totally know what to do yet. Like they put Thornwell on him. He doesn't totally know how to post up. He doesn't know really how to demand the ball all the time and all that stuff. Philly, Indiana. You're a little scared of Indiana, Chris Ryan.
Yeah,
You're a
I'm
little
only
bit scared.
I'm spooked on like a macro narrative level because I think that a first round loss to Boston, Toronto, or Cleveland is like a dignified death. But losing to Indiana would be like the entire season, especially here. We've been paying way more attention to Philly than Indiana, even though Indiana's had this incredibly successful season given what people expected from them. And to kind of get taken out by them would be like, you were never real this whole time.
Well, they've won 10 straight.
Peaking too early.
They ruined my over-under bet, which was entirely made on Embiid. It was like, there's no way Embiid plays 50 games.
Have you gone back to our dinner bet yet? Have you gone back to
what was our dinner bet?
I think it was over under 8 games for Fultz, and I'm gonna go over, I think.
Oh, so I owe you dinner.
Yes.
I'll take you to Major Domo.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, the Fultz thing came out of nowhere. He looks
like an
really
NBA player.
fast and athletic.
Yeah, he's really good. He's really good.
I don't know why teams aren't playing 5 feet off him.
I mean, we saw a little bit of that.
Do you think that like the
to
combination of Simmons and Fultz in a game, not together, but just in general, just like
can't do it,
breaks defenses a little bit because they're just like, how did Simmons score? It was like had 25 on like 10 for 12 shooting the other night. Like,
yeah. Simmons is having these box scores that Jason Kidd used to have in the 1990s where he has like 5 points, 13 rebounds, and 15 assists.
Yes.
But it's not a triple double, but there should be its own word for it. I don't know what it is. Simmons to me is the great X factor of the entire Eastern Conference. What I've seen from him over the last 2 months, the rookie of the year, I don't even want to talk about it. The confidence that he's playing with now,
so much.
He looks like a 29-year-old. And there's like a lot of Australian in him, and I mean that in a positive way. Like he's just a badass. He's not afraid of anybody. He's super aggro. He's always moving at the speed he wants to move. And I just think he's been awesome to watch. He really knows. He knows exactly what he can do and he can't do. He never goes out of his comfort zone ever. And he's really fucking fun to play with. Like he's a good passer who gets the ball in the right spots to the right people.
He's constantly in control. It feels
Always.
like anytime the ball is in his hands, it feels like the right play is about to happen.
It feels like Kidd too, where with Kidd, it was, did you ever see Kidd turn it over? Did you ever see Kidd make a really bad pass? There was always these good passes, especially in that peak of that Nets period where you just felt like, oh, he's got the ball. Like nothing bad is going to happen here.
The difference is last 3 minutes when it really slows down and the D goes up. Kidd, it took him a while to figure it out. And it really wasn't until he was on the Nets where it's just like, I'm going to get us a shot, guys. I have not seen that with Ben Simmons, and I don't think we're going to see it for 2-3 years. And I honestly don't think it matters either. I don't think for him to be like I got this, I'll create us a shot. You're talking 2020, 2021 before he figures that part out. And that'll be the last piece for him. And that'll be the difference between he's probably somewhere between the 14th and 20th best player in the league right now.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to make all NBA, but I would put him in that group. But for him to be like a top 3, top 4 type guy, that'll be the last piece.
For sure. I mean, he needs to be at least a threat to shoot. I think we saw we talked about this on a pod before where young LeBron even had games where he was limited when teams forced him into being a shooter. Simmons is going to have that same issue in the playoffs, whether it's against Indiana or somebody in the later rounds. We're going to see that where it's like he's just not there yet, but he has everything else. Like he checks every single box.
He's incredible.
Except for jump shot.
And I think he's getting better defensively too. The thing I think he can learn, and he might even be able to learn it on the fly here these next couple weeks, there's a couple spots he can score from. And he's got to figure out during games like, oh, I'm just going to go to that spot, get me the ball. I know I can do that. And there's like 3 things he knows he can do, and that'll really help them.
I was kind of cynical about the Bellinelli and Ilyasova additions, but you can tell he really thrives playing with veteran players, because there was a few times with TLC or some of the younger guys where Simmons was clearly thinking about the game on a level that they hadn't figured out yet. Where the passes were coming from, he's firing balls into people's shooting motions. This is passing on a really, really advanced level. You can watch a game. If you have time, just like watch a Sixers game and just watch his passing. And I think that some of the veteran guys are able to complement that level of passing in a way that some of the younger kids are still learning about.
Those were great signings. That I don't love the buyout rule. It's just it's a very strange
seems like
rule
cheating,
to
right?
me.
I don't like it.
I don't think it seems like it's not cheating because it's legal. It's just it's really weird to me that you can just cut Bellinelli and Ilyasova and they end up on a playoff team. And we see it every year, and there's always like 4 or 5 guys. It's really helped the Sixers. Yeah. And it's weird that they didn't have to give up anything for it, I guess is my point.
What's the alternative?
No, there's nothing. It was just great.
Or?
And that's part of like you build a good team, and then you want to be able to get somebody like Bellinelli to be like, I want to play for you guys. But it's just a weird rule. No other sport really works like that. I think it's rounded out their team. They've actually been able to extend their leads sometimes.
And now they have actual depth, and they have two identities. One's this like veteran savvy team, and the other one is this. The big thing also is that, especially in the last couple weeks before he got injured, one of the things that I thought was almost revolutionary about what they were doing was that all this stuff with this inside out game with Embiid and Simmons, but with Simmons playing inside, and Embiid being at the top of the key. And I used to just sort of be horrified by Embiid holding the ball at the top of the key for 7 seconds. That was the only part of his game that I was kind of like, please just, you are the most dominating inside presence in the last 10 years. Can you please just go down low? But now it almost seems to be working to their advantage, because teams are like, what do we do here? How do you switch Embiid and Simmons?
It's too weird. It's too out of the blue. The guys that were clearly guys who should be in a playoff rotation, and it worked out for 2 of them, were Bellinelli and Brewer.
Oh, yeah, both.
Tyreek Evans was the other one, and they stupidly didn't trade him more, and they didn't waive him either. But Brewer's somebody, like, we've seen him do it before, and for what OKC had going, a dramatic improvement. We should talk about the Celtics really quickly, not because they're my favorite team, but I'm just amazed that they're still in this thing for the 1 seed where they've basically gotten 60 games combined out of Kyrie and Hayward. The Stevens Coach of the Year thing is done. I don't see how anybody could argue anything else. The fascinating things that have happened.
You think Brad over Quinn?
Oh yeah. Just take the top 2 players off any playoff team in the league and get 60 games out of them instead of 160. Like they've lost over 100 games from their top 2 guys. Tatum has gone up a level. He's had the classic rookie season, like almost like you could have done the formula for it. First 2 great months, swoon, rookie wall. Now it's like he's really starting to get his feet. And then the Marcus Morris trade, which was the 3rd best trade Danny made last summer. Marcus Morris for Avery Bradley was like a heist. Avery Bradley's been hurt all year. He's going to leave. And then the Shane Larkin and just like there's this grittiness with this team that if they can survive round 1 and bring Kyrie back into this, they're going to be a tough out.
To your point about Tatum, it's not like that he's just getting more shots. He's not just catching shooting more without Kyrie. He's running more pick and roll. They're putting him through more dribble handoffs, more stuff off screens. He's part of like the fabric of their offense now, and he hasn't lost any shooting efficiency or
What's
anything.
up with the rookie wall? It doesn't seem like it was as big of a factor this year.
Yeah, for any of the guys, really.
It was for Tatum. He talked about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
But it seems like the guy that there's been a little bit of a bounce for a couple of these guys in the last 20, 30 games.
That seems to be what happens.
These are some good rookies, though. Too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
a great class. I really enjoyed this class.
I think what happened with Tatum, there was so much pressure because they had that streak. So all of a sudden it was like they're playing a playoff game. There was like a little 7-game stretch there. It was like every game was a playoff game basically. And I do think it wore out him and Jaylen Brown to some degree, but the sophistication with how they use Tatum now, I was really frustrated just as a fan of the team. Like, why doesn't Tatum get more shots? Why don't we use him more? And obviously Stevens was really carefully easing him toward where this was going. I think to win 56, 57, 58, wherever they end with everything that's happened this year is lunacy. I don't understand it.
I think if before the season, you would have been quite happy with that had Hayward and Irving been healthy the entire season.
It makes no sense. And then you look at the getting rid of Bradley, Crowder, Isaiah, which they've obviously sold high at the perfect time on those three. And it seemed ruthless at the time, and it still does. But, man, you mentioned Toronto. What was that game? We were talking on the phone the other day. They had that one game that they blew in the refs. They had a streak on. Was it OKC?
I believe it was OKC, right?
And they were mad at the refs. And then it seems like they lost momentum. There was about a 10-day stretch there where everybody was like, Toronto, it's going to happen this year. This is a different team. I believe in these guys. Yeah, they lost that OKC game.
132-125, they lost that.
And then they lost that Wednesday Cleveland game, which I think was a really pivotal point in their season because it was like they lay the smack down. They put up, I think, 79 in the first half or some crazy number, blowing Cleveland out. LeBron came back. It became clear that, we can't beat LeBron. We've never been able to stop him ever. And now it feels like the whole balance of the conference has swung again. Cleveland's favored to win the East again. And it was all really because of that game. If Toronto won that game, we wouldn't even have the conversation.
That was the game when Cavs fans were like, you know what? We can outscore teams. We have LeBron. Don't worry about it. We're good. Because Toronto in that first half, they still gave up a lot of points too. Their defense
has not been as good.
3 weeks now. They've really been struggling on that end of the floor, and their offense hasn't.
What do you ascribe that to? Has there been some injury that there was, or has it just been like wear and tear over the course of a long season?
Part of me wonders if it's fatigue. They're just making little weird mistakes that they didn't before, and I also wonder how much of it is teams are just exposing some of their weaknesses a little bit more as the season wears on. Like Valanciunas is better, but he's still not a great rim protector, right? Their perimeter defense isn't that great. And then you think about a matchup against Cleveland potentially in the playoffs. They have nobody.
You think Valanciunas is going to play that much in a series against Cleveland?
Here's the tough part. Like their offense is better with him.
Yeah.
Because he's so good at just running plays, setting screens, and he's been shooting a couple of threes, so he can at least space a little bit for the team. Whereas Pirtle, better defender, but doesn't make quite the same impact on offense.
Right.
Siakam, nobody worries about him on offense. You don't need to really defend him at all.
And they can't really play. They have a who's our best five problem that during the regular season doesn't matter. Games. Yeah, but in a playoff series, it matters. At some point, you have to know who your best five is. You were about to say, I'm mind reading you, that they didn't have anybody to guard LeBron, but nobody does. Now, here's the thing. Nobody has anybody to guard LeBron. But you have guys that can at least slow him down and make him work. Like the Celtics have guys to throw at him.
Yeah.
They have three. They have Morris. They have Jason Tatum, and most importantly, Jaylen Brown. And you just throw guys at him. LeBron's still going to get his points.
Right. You're not worried about Norman Powell or any of these guys.
Toronto doesn't have anybody that they can throw at him.
All those guys you listed, when they're on the floor, they don't hurt you offensively. Siakam and OG Anunoby. OG's shooting the ball pretty well over the course of the full season, 36% from three, but he's been really poor lately, and teams aren't worried about him. I mean, even though his percentages are fine, you're not worried about OG spotting up. Siakam, don't need to defend him. So they don't have a guy that at least keeps you afloat.
So I guess the question would be more than, because I think that depth has been such a huge part about various teams' success over the last couple of seasons in the regular season, but still inevitably there's going to be this rotation shortening that happens. We're not going to see 11 guys on Toronto playing double-digit minutes. So who's going to fall out of the rotation? And is the fact that even DeMar at the top is only playing like averaging 34 minutes a game, whereas Cleveland's been so top heavy all season long, playing their guys so many extensive minutes and have been, with the exception of LeBron, really injury prone. I don't know. I'm pretty high on Toronto. I don't think that this is fake. I don't think that this season they're having is like an illusion.
I'm concerned.
I am too.
I'm concerned for them in the Cleveland matchup because I just think it's like a big brother, little brother thing. And it's weird. Like they really rely on Van Vliet. He's out there in big moments for them. Mm-hmm. This is somebody that, it almost seems like they're most comfortable playing three guard.
I'm sure they are. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to work against Cleveland.
Well, that's the tough part is putting the right pieces, the right personnel on the floor that manages to at least contain LeBron as well as you can hope to contain LeBron versus maintaining your offensive prowess. So it's the type of thing where Casey needs to find the right balanced lineup that he can lean on in those moments when they just need to be at their absolute best. And I don't know. I mean,
let me throw this team at you. John Wall, who Joe House I talked to yesterday, he was all excited because John Wall, he said he's 15 pounds skinnier. He's like, we don't have fat John Wall anymore. I think he did this whole riff on Ringer NBA. But the Wall-Beal combo, being able to throw Porter and Oubre at LeBron, at least like slow him down a tiny bit.
And Morris.
Yeah, and Morris, who has been up and down this year. But I think that's a tough series for them. I don't think they're going to beat Cleveland, but I think it's conceivable. And I certainly don't trust Cleveland in
100% dependent on what John Wall we get.
Yeah,
and how he fits within
though.
like a Cleveland team that's been more successful by moving the ball.
Could you make the case that the Wizards learning how to survive without John Wall was actually the only way that this team could go up a level? Because now it's like, we kind of learned how to rely on Beal a little bit more and do some stuff.
Yeah,
and
you find out that Saturansky's a real
John Wall
NBA player.
Back.
Otto Porter took a little bit of a mini leap during the
If he
season
can
as
figure
well.
out how to fit into everything they kind of built for better and worse versus like, it's my show, I'm going to shoot 26 times.
But you're not saying that
Game 5.
Washington has a better shot against Cleveland than Toronto does, are you?
No. But I'd rather catch Cleveland in round 1 than round 3.
And throw them like a guy they haven't seen in a couple months in Wall. What's the status update?
Because here's the other thing. Here's the other thing with Cleveland. They have dudes in that series who have never been in a big game before, other than Rodney Hood, who disappeared in that Clippers series. And I don't trust Rodney Hood whatsoever. Clarkson's never been in a big game. Larry Nance hasn't been in a big game. I want to take my swings at them in round 1. Round 3, they're comfortable. They get their feet wet. They've been in some, big spotlight games.
I think to your point about Washington, they match up better on paper with their roster, but you'd still take Toronto because of the sheer talent level.
I guess. I just don't know who guards LeBron for them. I don't know what they do. I think LeBron
I
goes
appreciate
into
what the Wizards have managed to pull off without Wall, but I think the fact that we're talking about this is crazy. Like, Toronto has been awesome this year.
I'm with you. I just think LeBron goes into a Toronto series like, I got this. They have nobody who can guard me. I'm beating them.
Yeah. Okay. But I don't think he's shook going in up against Saturansky and Kelly Oubre.
But at least it's like, oh, they have Otto Porter. Okay. Think about that guy for a split second. He's like, oh no, there's Siakam.
He's not like there's Siakam. He's like, there's DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry.
He's fine. He's been beating those guys for 5 years. I really do.
So
think
you don't have any of like this is the bogey team that this Toronto core has to get over. They're going to slay the dragon and move forward, because we've talked about this before about how we have kind of like short vision when it comes to teams now, where we're like, oh, your window is so small. But Toronto's following a fairly typical NBA trajectory of taking their lumps for a couple of years, and now this is the time.
They are, but they aren't. Because DeRozan, under no scenario, is in the top level of players in the league. He's on the next level.
Okay.
I think there's 7 guys that matter, and then we go to the next level, and he's on that level, right? 7 or 8, whatever we want to say. The history of the finals says it's really hard to make the finals unless you have guys in that top group. Mm-hmm. So the way to sneak in is if it's like an 0-4 Pistons type situation where just perfect circumstances,
for sure,
weaker league, and you catch the team at the right time, all of a sudden you win the title. And I thought there was a chance that Toronto could be that team
because of their defense.
Also,
correct.
Like the thing about that Pistons
and
team,
their backcourt familiarity, and also the East was a complete shit show. And it's like, oh, this is the perfect setup for them.
And that Pistons team was, if you combine the collective personalities of the people involved with that Pistons team, it was basically like having a top 7 player. Yeah. Those guys were some of the most savvy, competitive, aggressive.
Well, and it turns out Ben Wallace was a top like 6 or 7 player.
Right.
We just weren't thinking of him that way until after the thing.
And the thing with Toronto, with Toronto's defense is that a couple of weeks ago when I wrote the article about the Spurs, they have this poor net rating. They've performed poorly against teams over 500.
FYI, there's a Reddit thread today about how they've gone 8-2 since that article.
And Toronto was the other
One of many
team
reasons why I don't go there.
Toronto was the other team that had performed poorly, and John Schumann from NBA.com put out a great stat that kind of highlighted that as well, where Toronto's defense has ranked 29th against teams with a top 10 offensive rating, whereas they've just beaten up on virtually everybody else. So against top offenses,
they're not
their defense hasn't been outstanding.
My
the
fear
entire
for them.
year.
So the first or second year I did TV, that Knicks team when Carmelo was a top 3 MVP and they were shooting a ton of threes.
The Kid team, when Kid was on.
Yeah. And they kind of peaked in March, but there was this run from like December to March where they were awesome. And everybody's like, wow, this team's for real. Oh my God. And then by the time we got to April, they had kind of crested and then they were back to.
But wasn't that Knicks team like the 3rd or 4th seed?
No, that team, I think that team was the 2nd seed. They won in the mid 50s that year. I'm going to look.
But I don't think that, I
wins.
think this Toronto team has offensively been on the, like just a hair beneath the Warriors and the Rockets this year, right?
Yeah, they've been outstanding for sure.
But what you're not remembering is that Knicks team was awesome offensively that year. That was like one of the first teams that was shooting 33s a game and making a ton of threes. And
they were the 2 seed with 54 wins. They had the 7th, the 3rd ranked offensive rating, 18th defensive rating. So they
were making like 12 threes a game, and Carmelo was playing great.
Yeah,
People
Carmelo
were like,
was
wow,
incredible.
This is
that
the year
season.
for the Knicks.
Yeah,
and then it just kind of, that was it. I think it's dangerous sometimes to peak early, and my fear with Toronto is they might have peaked 3-4 weeks ago. And I think if they had beaten Cleveland in that game, even though it was one game, it's regular season, whatever.
That was a psychologically damaging game.
The team that I think if they could get their shit together, that America might not be ready for, ironically, I said this a couple weeks ago, is fucking Philly. Because just from a talent standpoint, if you have a weird conference and nobody's that good, at some point it's just like who's good on each side, and there's 3 minutes left. And
it all depends on
who
Embiid.
has the athletes, and it's like they have Embiid and Simmons. Those guys on the court will be 2 of the best players in the court.
It's like Chris said, it all depends on Joel Embiid.
Is he coming back for Indiana? When he comes back, is he going to be a little bit spooked by the mask and everything else?
If they have Embiid healthy, he's one of those guys that he arguably could be the best player on the floor.
Yeah, and he has that game where if the games do slow down and you do need to
feed him,
eat up shot clock. Yeah, we've seen him multiple times against the Lakers, against all these other teams, just put up those kinds of like classic center games.
This is why I love the East this year, though, because I think I'm prepared for anything. I don't know what the F's going to happen. I think any of the teams can lose in round 1, all 8. I think all 8 can lose in round 1. And I have no idea who's going to make the finals. And you can make a case for every single team. It's pretty
exciting.
cool.
It is. It's amazing.
The West, it's like, we know. Houston's going to be there. If Curry misses round 2, Golden State's vulnerable. If not, no. But we're getting Golden State and Houston. That's happening. In the East, I don't know. All right, guys. This was fun. We hit everything?
Yeah, I think so, SG.
I think you're riding high in the Sixers. I could see in your eyes.
I found myself in a weird position where I'm trying to defend San Antonio and Toronto and temper expectations on Philly.
I haven't seen this look in your eyes since we were doing the Miami Vice rewatchables.
Can I throw out an X factor for all Philly postseason stuff? Dario.
Yes.
Dario's been playing out of his mind since the All-Star break.
That's it. But this is what we were saying about who are your 5. The Sixers know who their 5 are. When there's 5 minutes left, I know who their 5 guys are going to be. And all of them play well together.
Yes. And they're huge.
And I can't believe that they figured out how to get Sarge, Embiid, and Simmons to all make sense together on a basketball court, but they did.
Sarge helped by improving his jumper.
Yeah.
I think that's really clicked for him. It's just like overseas. Dario, his shot started like 30%. Then by the end, 40% 3-point shooter. Same thing's happening now in the NBA. He's awesome.
Sam Hinkie, that trade was his greatest moment.
Alfred for Dario, basically.
Well, just taking Alfred, knowing Orlando wanted him, and just kind of riding out the next 5 minutes, waiting for Orlando to panic, which is exactly what he did. He just took their guy.
Yeah.
And then he didn't want him. He already had Michael Carter Williams, who was like, what the hell was he going to do with both of those guys? And he just kind of stared at Orlando and waited. And Orlando was like, oh, well, all right, we'll give you 12 in next year's first. And Hinky's like, done.
Man.
And he just took their dude.
Hinkie
and
won.
got Saric, who was the guy he wanted.
Hinkie won every trade he made.
He really
Everyone.
did. He was a great trader.
Yep.
He's no Danny Ainge, but great trader. All right, guys. KOC, what are you working on this week?
I'm not sure yet. Probably some playoff preview type of stuff, and also going to be starting to do a lot of research on awards and all that stuff.
All right, gun to your head. Who comes out of the East?
Cleveland.
Gun to your head. Who comes out of the East, Chris?
Philly.
Yes.
Philly.
Sure.
You're feeling it.
I'm
Hell
feeling
yeah.
it.
Damn.
Embiid back for the first round
Yeah.
with the mask.
Sure.
Yes.
If I had to bet my life, I can't believe this, but I think they stink. I would bet on Cleveland. I would just bet on LeBron. I'm not even
course.
betting on their team.
Are
I'm
you
just
bummed
betting on
out because
LeBron.
the finals are going to be a sweep then?
Yeah, I think the playoffs are going to be super fun, and the finals are probably going to be the worst part of it.
Yeah.
You'll have, if it's LeBron versus Houston or LeBron Golden State, LeBron will, he'll take care of business in one game.
You see Gordon Hayward back jogging. on the
Give
court
me a
today.
break. Just
Bill.
come on.
That's not happening. Jesus. All right, coming up, my buddy JackO's going to call him, but first this. Let's talk about Acer to the doers, the dreamers, the explorers, whatever it is that motivates you to work harder, stay up later, dedicate yourself to your passions. Guess what? Acer supports you. How? By building a laptop designed to exceed your expectations. Meet the Acer Swift 5. Acer took incredibly light and matched it with incredibly powerful to give you reliability on the go. Equipped with a high-definition IPS touchscreen, powerful 8th generation Intel Core i7 processor. The Acer Swift 5 helps you reach your full potential. Go to acer.com, click on store, enter coupon code Simmons at checkout to receive 10% off plus free ground shipping on a Swift Series laptop, including already discounted models. Offer valid through April 30th, 2018. Limited to one per qualified offer. Windows, hello. The password is you. Windows 10. And while we're here, I've been shaving since college. You know what changed my life? The Gillette Fusion Ultra Sensitive Skin Shaving Gel. No longer do I get those annoying cuts on my neck. Oh, what about the new Gillette 5 Razor? 5-bladed razor lubrication strip. Provides great gliding performance with less irritations. I need less irritations in all facets of my life. 15 soft microfins help create an even, smooth shaving surface by gently stretching your skin. The 360 Aqua Grip Handle. Make sure you have total control of your razor even when it's all wet. I ordered it, got 4 refillable razors and free shipping. And then every 4th order free because I subscribed, and now you can do the same. Get Gillette Performance delivered to your door. No more getting mad at yourself because you just got back from the grocery store and realized you forgot to buy blades. Subscribe now. Pick your favorite razor. Get every 4th order free. Visit Gillette online at GilletteOnDemand.com. Now here's JackO. All right, on the phone right now. He can't come to Augusta with us. He's got the Griswold family vacation coming, but he's here right now. The baseball season has started. He's got to watch the Winklevoss twins, Stanton and Judge. Now he's here right now, my buddy JackO. How's your Yankee season going?
Not as well as I would have expected. It's not terrible, but it's not as much as I hoped for.
What's been lacking for you other than wins?
Well, the bullpen has not really lived up to its preseason billing of being not just the best in baseball, but maybe one of the best in history. It's kind of stumbled out of the gate. Dellin Betances has resumed his form from last year, which is not a good thing because he looks now maybe like he might not be what we thought he was.
He's skinny,
or maybe
right?
he is what we thought. What's that?
Skinnier Betances this year.
Is he? I don't know. I didn't really notice a big difference in that regard.
14
but maybe.
pounds.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah. Maybe he
I
lost
don't know if that's
14
good or
pounds
bad.
off his fastball.
It could be, yeah. I mean, he screwed up the game. He was getting hit pretty good the other day, gave up a home run, and he was getting knocked around, and then he, made an ill-timed or poorly thrown ball to home when Pilar stole home. So I think it was Pilar dancing off third, and they would have had him by about 20 feet, except that Betances, got in his head and he threw it wildly to the screen. So that was not great. And then yesterday, Conley gave up a home run to Smoke, and then Robertson came in and, got in some trouble and then gave up the grand slam. So the lockdown bullpen has not been locked down. And even in a game that they won, Chapman gave up a run. So has not really been as shut down as I would have hoped. And then I would have hoped that Judge has me a little worried because it's only 4 games, mind you, but he has not. He's gotten on base a little bit. He had 2 hits the first day, and then he had a single yesterday. But there's been a lot of strikeouts wrapped around that, and so we're supposed to have these twin mashers, and so far he hasn't mashed. It's obviously early yet, but it wasn't like they were exactly facing. They weren't really facing Sandy Koufax either, So
he played center. You didn't like that?
I did not like that either because a big guy like that, he's a great athlete. I'll give you that, but I just think there's a lot more reason for concern at center. He can bump into guys in the left and right, and or a short pop up, and you getting issues with an infielder who's back to catch the ball. I just think there's a lot more injury potential in center field than there is in left or right. We had this much valley. Please,
I loved it.
Of course you did.
The possibility for chaos and a disastrous moment just to tenfold in there. It reminds me, my wife and I binged the first 6 episodes of Survivor last night.
Really?
And they had, I still like Survivor. I'll stand by Survivor. Right. I don't care what people think. They had this one, anytime they blindfold people and they blindfold them, but they have to do stuff, but there's the one person shouting instructions from afar who's like their voice coach. And there's like, go right, go left. No, watch out. And the people are just running into poles at full speed and hitting things and just getting hurt. And I can't believe they ever do that as a challenge. That's kind of how I feel with Judge and center. I think he's going to take somebody out in a really dramatic way. And I'm here for it, Johnny.
It's funny, the Yankees, they were like, they have this embarrassment of outfield riches because this is calling Jacoby Ellsbury involved in something being rich is rich in itself. But they have Stanton, they have Judge, they have Gardner, they have Aaron Hicks, and they have the Ellsbury, and then they had Clint Frazier waiting in the wings. So it was like we almost have too many outfielders.
Just no center fielders.
And then Ellsbury, had his usual get hurt in spring training, and poor Clint Frazier ran into a wall and is still in the post-concussion protocol.
Oh, Clint.
And then Aaron Hicks does something to his oblique, or I think he did something that was oblique, his side somehow, so he's on the DL. They bring up young Billy McKinney, who had a pretty good spring, and you're like, maybe this kid can make some noise given his opportunity. And he then runs into a wall in Toronto in his second game and bangs up his shoulder. So now it's like we have this, supposedly embarrassingly rich outfield, and now we have to put Judge in center. And the other ironic thing is I was reading over the weekend, it said Judge played center field in the minors. Apparently he played there in high school and college, I guess. And then when he came to the Yankees system, they're like, well, you're going to have to move from center because we have Jacoby Ellsbury under the worst contract in the history of mankind.
Oh, no.
And he's locked down to that forever. Although they didn't call it the worst. I'm paraphrasing. I'm editorializing. But we have Jacoby Ellsbury, who's going to be our center fielder and an anchor around our necks for the next 13 years. So you need to move to another position. So that's how he became a right fielder.
Well, let me tell you about the Red Sox because I was watching them all weekend. 4 nail biters against the Devil Rays.
Yeah.
Joe Kelly blew the first one, and then they pulled off all 3. But the big storyline, Johnny, I know you'll love this. Once upon a time, we were making his Hall of Fame plaque.
Well, a current Hall of Famer is living up to his billing, yes.
Once upon a time, his Hall of Fame plaque, we had written his first name in, and we were chiseling in the second name, and then it just a bad year last year. He got hurt. He had no power. He had a bad wing, and now he's healthy. And Xander Bogaerts,
was he hitting about 900?
I was thinking this weekend, I was trying to think about him versus Rogers Hornsby and Honus Wagner. Some of the other greats.
Coin flip, really.
The names that we grew up with, those middle infielders who just were at a whole other level. And that's where he is, Johnny. It's what a swing of emotions I've had because,
opening day on Thursday, and the Yanks roll to an 8-1 victory. Severino looks great. Stanton hits 2 home runs. I was even willing to overlook John Sterling's horrific call, which may be the worst call since sports started on the radio. And the Red Sox have a lead, and then they blow it. Their bullpen implodes. JD Martinez did nothing. Great. I'm like, oh my God, could this have gone any better for me? And then, then the Red Sox squeak out 3 more wins. Bogarts, you can't get him out. Martinez finally got some hits, and I think he got an RBI yesterday. Price looked good, and the Yankees bullpen implodes, and we got outfield injuries all over the place, and Judge really hasn't done much. So I'm like, my God, what a swing we've had over the weekend. It's just dispiriting. I was ruined the second half of my Easter. I was like, I was having a fine Easter with my family. Easter Bunny brought me jelly beans. It was all good. And then I'm watching the Yankees. We go sit down for dinner. I'm kind of monitoring it on my phone, and the grand slam happens. And then I was like cranky the rest of Easter. And I'm like, it's the 4th game of the season. This is so ridiculous to have your emotions so tied up with this stupidity. And so, yeah, there you go. They've hurt me already.
And then ultimately it just doesn't matter because the Astros are going to go 125-37.
Potentially.
It just doesn't matter.
We'll see.
None of this matters. The Astros might have the best American League team we've ever seen. They're ridiculous.
I confess to not having paid attention to them yet this season, but has Garrett Cole pitched yet? I'll believe that when I see it, that he does it over the long haul in the American League. We'll see.
He's better the Yankees didn't get him.
Well, I was hoping for it, but this is one of these things, and this is where this will be now recorded for posterity because I'll overreact. But like Sonny Gray, right? Now Sonny Gray and Garrett Cole, I'll confess, before they started being involved with the Yankees or their Yankees rivals, I wouldn't have known either one of them if they walked into this room. Yeah. But everybody's like, oh, you got to get Sonny. The Yankees need Sonny Gray. They got to get Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray. He's 26. He's great. Sonny Gray. So we trade. We have a huge depth of prospects. So we trade some prospects for Sonny Gray. So I'm like, oh my God, Sonny Gray. We got him. Young and under control. He comes in. He was mediocre last year for the Yankees and extremely frustrating. Yeah. So they're like, well, now Sonny Gray, full year with the Yankees, and he's comfortable in New York. And Sonny Gray. So Sonny Gray comes in, and yesterday he couldn't have been more frustrating to watch. He couldn't get out of the 4th. He got through 4 innings, couldn't get out of the 5th. He's got guys on base every inning. He's pitching in and out of trouble, and I'm like, Sonny Gray, like what was so great about this? And then it's the same thing about Garrett Cole. Oh, it's Garrett Cole. We got to get Garrett Cole. Like, I've made this before, and it's legendary in the BS Report history when I said I'm not going to be bouncing my grandkids on my knee talking about Anthony Rizzo, which in retrospect I may well be, but I'm not going to be bouncing my kids on my knee talking about Garrett Cole. I'm going to go right back into that well and jinx myself again. But he's a difference maker. Give me a break.
We should mention he had a 7-inning start and a win already, and he struck out 11. Okay. He struck out 11.
Who did they? 11. That's pretty. Who did they play?
It wasn't anybody that good, but still,
that's solid. Yeah, I'm not gonna turn my nose up at that. I'm not.
Yeah, they.
So there you go. Now I will be Rangers. I have 2 daughters. Hopefully they'll have multiple grandchildren, so I can bounce one on one knee about Rizzo, and then I can bounce another one on another knee talking about Garrett Cole.
I'm worried
regaling them with stories about Garrett Cole's legendary awesomeness.
I'm worried about the Astros just completely blowing this season apart and us kind of losing the will to live by June. Like we relaunched the Ringer MLB show a couple weeks ago, which you've been on, and they did over unders last week. And Michael Bauman had Zach Cram, who's one of our rising stars here at the Ringer, and who just calmly laid out like the AL West overrunners. He's just ripping off facts. And they get to the Astros, and he's like, the Astros have 7 of the 10 best starters in the division. It's like 2 of them can't start because they can only start 5 guys at a time. So they had to move them to the bullpen. It's a disaster, Johnny. It's not good.
I will say this. Yes, they have Keuchel. I'll believe Verlander can do it for a full season. I mean, I know he was brilliant in the postseason. No one knows that more than me. I want to see Verlander at whatever age he is and how many miles on his arm do it for a full season. And regardless of his debut, I want to see Garrett Cole do it over the course of a full season.
Like they have
the amazing thing, though, I will give them this, is that UConn's own Connecticut's own and UConn's own George Springer is turning himself into a superstar.
I know he has been good. Yeah, McHugh and Peacock would probably be the number 2 starters on the Red Sox. Depending on if this David Price thing is real or not, I don't want to get my hopes up. He does look better this year.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think it's going to be a long year, but I'm glad you brought up UConn because that was one of the reasons you called. Or I wanted to call you. Every year when UConn loses in March Madness, my first thought is, wow, I can't believe somebody beat UConn. My second thought is, I can't wait to watch the highlights to see Gino Auriemma do the half-hearted, I'm still walking past you shitty handshake that it was. That's with the opposing coach. Such a bad loser. And then my third reaction is I can't wait to talk to JackO because I know other than maybe the Red Sox or Patriots losing, nothing brings you more joy than the UConn's women's team going down. What were your thoughts? Walk us through it.
Well, it was Friday night and they played a late game and I really didn't even give it like a second thought because I'm like, well, it's a fait accompli that they're going to roll by 150. They put up 140 on somebody earlier in the tournament. They had like 90 at the half. The New York Post Phil Mushnick was all outraged by that. It was a battle between Phil Mushnick and Gino Auriemma. I didn't know who to root
Two of
for.
the greats.
It was like the Iran-Iraq war. So that was exciting. And then somebody emailed me or tweeted me a GIF or something of Gino Auriemma, and it was like the first thing he ever did that I supported because the NCAA has this ridiculous thing that you can only have an NCAA sponsor's liquid on your post-game press conference, be it water or Powerade or Gatorade, or you have to have it in an NCAA cup. And Auriemma came out and he had a Dasani water, which must not be a sponsor. Yeah. Some NCAA minion was trying to like grab the water from him while he like played fetch with it. It was fantastic work by Auriemma. So I didn't really think anything of them winning. I figured they were going to roll through to a championship because they were 35 an hour, 36, whatever, and they've won every game by some ridiculous margin. So when I woke up Saturday morning, I looked at my phone on Twitter. I couldn't believe it that they had lost. It was unbelievable. And so then I flipped to ESPN, and they had highlights, and then I saw his post-game press conference, and he has very little experience with it, but he does not handle losing at all well. And he had this surly press conference about, well, you learn lessons, but I'm smart enough. I don't need to learn any more lessons. And it was fantastic.
Hey, I don't think there's any love lost with him and Muffet McGraw.
No, I don't think so.
The full pace walk handshake where you don't even stop for the split second, just graciously is my favorite. It was actually one of the great basketball games of the last couple of years. I had randomly my TV was on ESPN and or whatever. I think it was on ESPN. So when I got home and it had already happened, and it was the thing where you have the lag where you can rewind it and go backwards and see what was on the last hour and a half. And it was like Notre Dame almost blew that game in regulation in like a crazy way. Like it was over and they just completely choked in the last minute. And then it came back to the overtime. It was the same thing. They were up 5 with like 40 seconds left and almost choked again. And then that girl who's going to be, I mean, holy crap. Could she enter the WNBA?
Won both games.
Yeah, could she? And then she makes the 3, which is like, you don't see a ton of like threes with a hand in your face to win games in women's college basketball for whatever reason. That the combo of those 2 games, this is all of a sudden the WNBA is going to have like a new star here. That was crazy though. I mean, it was so much more exciting than the men's games. The men's games were pretty awful.
Oh, brutal.
And
it was amazing to me
either.
In watching 10 seconds of highlights on ESPN, which was as much of the game as I saw, is that, after she hit the shot, UConn only had like a 1 point something seconds left. They set up a pretty good play.
They did.
That girl damn near hit the layup, like, which would have been absolutely unbelievable, like a dagger to follow a dagger, So I was amazed that they made it as interesting as they did. And then I read that I guess Notre Dame had a big lead and UConn fought back, and then they fought back in OT as well. So, valiant effort for them, but all for naught. And then I'm always worried like the state's going to shut down because the UConn men, God bless them, are so pathetic now and are in a pathetic conference. Like all we have are the UConn women. So
what happened to the Kevin Ollie thing? I thought that was one of the weirdest stories. Like 3 years ago, he was debating between, he'd won a title and he was debating between re-signing with UConn or like taking the Knicks job or the OKC job. He basically had all these picks and he stayed in UConn. And then like 2 years later, like, you got to leave. You're terrible. You got to get out of here. I didn't understand that.
And now they're trying to like get out from his contract for cause, but they haven't really said like what the cause is. You know, like what if he, did some shady basketball recruiting or something, if that's the allegation, because they don't want to pay him. And by the time they litigate it, they ought to just pay him and make him go on his way. But I mean, UConn basketball, the men's team has fallen from its lofty heights to such a spot that like I almost feel bad for them. Is where it's really
you don't feel bad at all. You're dancing on their grave.
Because the part that makes me feel bad for UConn is they were the only ones that really did the right thing when it came to the Big East, where they were trying to keep the Big East alive and tried to stay loyal to the Big East. And all these Catholic schools were basically like, screw you, because of football. They were like, you go with your football thing and get the hell out of here. And all these other non-Catholic schools were racing for other conferences. And UConn was like, let's try to keep the Big East together. And they ended up holding the bag. And so they end up in this lousy conference that plays teams that nobody in the state cares about, after having 30 years of playing Georgetown and Syracuse and Boston College and all these teams that you had rivalries with, Villanova. That was a huge deal, and that was their identity. And you were on, they were on ESPN every Monday night or whatever with the Big East. You had CBS games with the Big East, and now they're in a conference that has to be impossible to recruit in, because even though you say, well, we've got 4 championships, that was a long time ago in a different conference. So there's no guarantee of being on TV. There's no guarantee of making the tournament, and there's no guarantee that you're going to, you can have an NBA career when you're in this lousy conference against lousy competition.
So they're in the AAC, and the other schools are Central Florida,
Tulsa,
Cincy, East Carolina, Houston, Memphis, South Florida, SMU.
Yeah,
wow.
Disaster.
Wow.
And they wanted to build their goal was to be like Michigan, that they wanted to have a big time basketball program and be a regional college and have a big time football program and a big time basketball program.
It actually did make sense.
They built this 40,000 seat stadium for football, and the football team has been wildly unsuccessful. I mean, people go to games to go to the tailgates and what have you, but when they initially built that, they were envisioning a Big East with Miami in it, and they'd be playing Miami, they'd be playing Boston College, Syracuse, and football. You could at least sell that a little bit, but nobody's buying tickets to go watch them play Central Florida. As good as Central Florida is, that's just not like a marquee matchup.
Yeah, and this is like an old guy thing for us, because we're old now. We're in our late 40s.
Yeah, very old.
And things change, and you got to roll with the punches, and that's just the way it goes. With that said, the fall of the Big East is such a bummer. We did the 30 for 30 about the heyday of it that Ezra did, who ended up doing the OJ thing. And it really did mean something in the 80s in a significant way. But just in general, it's really hard to believe we couldn't make this work. And it's hard to believe that you wouldn't have a Big East that has UConn and BC and Syracuse and Georgetown. And it's so logical. And now there's nothing. There's no cohesion. And I know the money and all that. I get all the reasons. And some schools jump to the ACC and football, and I get it. But it's just a bummer. It's weird that we haven't figured out. You know what else is a bummer? The fact that Loyola Chicago kind of, even though they're much bigger than Holy Cross, in my head, the Catholic Jesuit college that comes out of nowhere and makes the Final Four and plays this cool style with a bunch of 4-year players, and they're playing like the 2014 Spurs. And oh, by the way, they have this 98-year-old nun. I felt like that was our corner that I had always been rooting for. It would have been a 98-year-old priest for us, but but it was always what I wanted for our school. And
like, why can't we do that? Right? Just why can't we catch lightning in a bottle and have a couple guys that play out of their heads? It's not too much to ask for. I'm not asking that we become Duke or some national powerhouse, but could we have flashes every couple of years, or maybe we make a run? I'm not even asking for the Final Four. Could we get to a Sweet 16? Imagine how crazy we would go with that.
You see what Gonzaga did. You see Loyola Chicago, and it does seem like the window is open. I thought the style that they played was one of the keys for it, because, they had those guys there, and they really were creative offensively. And you just see it just doesn't seem like that hard to replicate.
Right.
And I didn't realize that school was that big though, because I was like, oh, I wonder if they have like 3,000 like we do. It's like 17,000 people there.
Yeah, that helps. They're a much bigger school with more resources and what have you. But I mean, college basketball, when we were in college and guys went for 4 years, and this is such an old guy rant, but guys went for 4 years, and you would know guys like Pearl Washington was at Syracuse, I swear, for 15 years. Like Sean Miller was at Pitt, I swear, for 8 years. So you got to know these guys. Chris Mullen at St. John's, Patrick Ewing and Patrick Ewing at Georgetown. Those guys had rivalries. You knew these guys. You either liked them or disliked them, depending on who you were rooting for. You were like way into it, but you had rivals you could remember. Now these guys, Kentucky, they have 5 new guys every year.
Yeah.
And then with, this is such an old guy rant too, but with this conference realignment, like I'm watching the NCAA and they're like West Virginia, and they talked about how they did in the SEC, and they're like, wait, what? West Virginia? Or I don't even know what conference West Virginia's in, but it's not the Big East, and so some random team is in some, Texas A&M is in the SEC, and you're like, wait, what? Like, when did that happen? I have no idea what conference anybody's in anymore, so you can't even follow conferences, let alone players.
It is
completely
incoherent. And like the Tate and Titus who do our college basketball podcast for us, it's their job to follow it, and they get it. They don't even think twice about it. For people like us, these schools just pop in every year. The players are almost always different. And it's made me lose. I didn't even do a bracket this year. I just felt like, what's the point?
It's just a crapshoot.
Throwing darts against the wall. It's not like there's any art to this.
So that's what murdered Kevin Ollie, I think. And maybe he couldn't recruit, and he won a championship. Everybody says, well, they were Calhoun's players that he recruited and Calhoun's system. And so he just inherited that, and he was the beneficiary when they won that year. But I think they have a hard time recruiting, and UConn, they should have taken that $18 million they're paying Danny Hurley, and maybe he'll be good. Maybe he'll recruit players. He got guys to go to Rhode Island, so maybe he can get them to go to UConn. But they should have taken that money and bribed somebody to get into a better conference. What makes sense for them is to get in the ACC.
Yeah. For
basketball and for football, that would be their saving grace, because people would be into it to go see North Carolina and go see Miami and go see Florida State. That would make all the sense in the world. Even if they got rolled in football, which they would, and there'd be compelling basketball matchups, obviously, with Carolina and, Duke, obviously. So that would be huge for them. That's what they should do. But
this goes back to the whole sports czar thing where, if there is a sports czar, the sports czar comes in and just looks at these conferences and says, all right, let's fix this. Sorry, guys, I'm stepping in. You're going here, you're going there, you're going there. And I've always joked about the sports czar thing going back to last decade when I was ready for page 2. Maybe this is the time for me to get it done. If I ever had a chance with the president, maybe it's this lunatic we have right now. Maybe I could talk him into it. It's not unrealistic.
You got to get on
right?
Fox. You got to get on Fox and Friends. You got to get yourself on Fox and Friends, maybe with like the Andre the Giant thing, and say, "Well, I'm here at Fox and Friends." That's when you pitch the sports czar idea.
So it would have to be a 6-month, almost like I'm a spy, or like I'm just going stealth, or I'm playing a character or something where. It's like, wow, Simmons lost his mind. He became a conservative, like Trump guy.
Right.
And I'm just going on these shows. I'm like, look, man, the more I looked at it, Trump's doing good stuff. And we shouldn't do anything about guns. And I just go all in, but it's with this plan that Trump's going to make me the sports czar. And actually, I'm going to do good. I'm going to do good things for sports. Let me think about this. Yeah, there is a roadmap for me here. Because there's a lot of stuff.
And then you can have the sports czar. You could have the sports czar put Holy Cross in the Big East, and then that would solve a lot of problems for both of us.
I'm going to be the sports czar. I'll be putting
you're the sports czar.
Yeah, I'm the sports czar.
Oh,
that's
so you'll put us in the Big East. That's great. That's good. Then.
I win over Trump. I start going on Fox and all these different things, and at some point he just loves me, and we meet at Mar-a-Lago, and,
of course.
And I'm just like, here's what I can do for you. He's like, this is great. But the problem is he might actually make me like the Secretary of State. He might think higher than sports czar. This guy has some good ideas.
You're too good to be sports czar. You need to be the Secretary of Defense.
You need to be my new vice president. I've decided to get rid of Mike Pence.
He puts you in charge of building the wall or something, and you're like, what happened here? What am I doing?
You're my new vice president. You can't fire your vice president. He's been elected. I don't care. I'm changing it. But we do need a sports hour. Like I was watching that heavyweight fight this weekend with Anthony Joshua, which was terrible. And he, at the end of the thing, he held 3 belts. But then Deontay Wilder,
nobody knows who he is.
Yeah, and it's like there's 4 belts. There's 4 heavyweight belts. We need 4.
Right, that's a problem.
I think for me, the highlight of March Madness was you and I emailing each other Jim Nantz 60 Minutes promos, none of which can be read on this podcast.
Right,
for the Stormy Daniels interview.
Well, and the other highlight for Jim is the other night, which I tweeted out, and I was not the only one to notice this, when he talked about when the kid from Michigan, the kid from Michigan, he jumped onto the broadcasting table, and there was a picture of my favorite person on earth, Bill Raftery, and Grant Hill, like reacting shocked, and they were talking about how Grant Hill got in the Hall of Fame. Jim Nantz says, and not only did he get in the Hall of Fame, but today he created a Hall of Fame meme, which he meant meme, but he called it a meme.
I didn't hear that. You said meme?
Oh, yeah, I tweeted it out. I'm like, did he just say
incredible.
meme? And then they had a replay of it, and he was like, that's a Hall of Fame meme for Grant Hill. Hello, friends. It's a meme for meme. Yeah, it was great.
He had a read for, God, I wish I could remember what show it was. He did a read during the Final Four, and I was dying. Oh, it was for The Last OG with Tracy Morgan. He's like, coming up, friends. It's a hilarious time. It's The Last OG with Tracy Morgan. His tonal inflection was totally wrong. He's not the audience for that show.
My favorite thing about the NCAA tournament, and I have watched a good portion of it, even though I don't know who's in what conference or know any of these players, is that it's on TBS, and they've had a thing on TBS where Snoop Dogg is going to host the Joker's Wild.
I saw that.
Snoop Dogg's the Joker's Wild, like Snoop Dogg of Dr. Dre fame back in 1992 and, 187 and Nothing But a G Thing. And now he's the host of the Joker's Wild. Like,
incredible.
It's just an amazing turn of events. Talk about somebody changing their persona,
Those are all on Amazon. And I watched them with my son and my daughter. I watched like 3 episodes because my son loved it because, he's got an IQ of like 50. And it is trapped in a time warp. It was like
the original.
It was like, we asked 100 secretaries if they had ever made out with their boss. How many of these 100 said they did? And like, it's literally like that. You can't believe it. It's just I was dying. You think it's like an SNL parody with Will Ferrell as the host, but it's not. These are actual like real questions. I highly recommend it. JackO, we're going to go enjoy Disney.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about the end of the Yankee season.
Please don't do anything to get yourself kicked out of Augusta because I've never asked for anything, but I really want to go next year.
Yeah, we're bringing you next year.
Please behave yourselves and act accordingly, and don't create any memes while you're there.
There'll be no memes at all. Thanks, JackO.
Excellent. Right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks to KOC. Thanks to Chris Ryan. Thanks to JackO. Thanks to ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire my listeners can try for free at ZipRecruiter.com/BS. Thanks to Acer, the Acer Swift 5, a laptop designed to exceed your expectations. If you want to try it out, go to Acer.com, click on store, enter coupon code Simmons at checkout to receive 10% off plus free ground shipping on a Swift Series laptop, including already discounted models. Offer valid through April 30th, limited to 1 per qualified offer. Windows Hello. The password is you, Windows 10. Thanks to Gillette. Get Gillette Performance delivered to your door. No more getting mad at yourself because you just got back from the grocery store and realized you forgot to buy blades. Try out great razors like the Gillette 5 razor now. Subscribe today. Pick your favorite razor. Get every 4th order free. Visit Gillette online at GilletteOnDemand.com. The next time you'll hear from me, I will be at Augusta. Don't forget to monitor the Shack House podcast, House of Carbs. Against all odds, we'll be going on there tomorrow night with our Masters picks. I'm coming back Wednesday night after we do the par 3 with a big pod about what it's like to be at Augusta. Stay tuned for that. And then we'll also be in House of Carbs as well. Looking forward to it. Enjoy the rest of the day.